60% of Americans don't have a college education.
Say it again, Mike.
60% of Americans and American voters do not have a college degree. The fastest growing segment of the non-college educated workforce is Latino. Overwhelmingly. The people entering the workforce overwhelmingly that don't have a college degree, that work with their hands, that are manufacturing, that are in agriculture, that are in construction, these are Latinos. These are all Hispanics, okay? What is happening is a realization that the policy framework that Latinos have voted for when we were much more immigrant dense, we were much more Spanish speaking, when we were much more unskilled labor force, doesn't work anymore.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast. Chuck Rocha coming to you live from Rocha Studios here in Washington, D.C. And lo and behold, for all of you YouTube subscribers, we have Mike Madrid back. And I found out he was, in fact, not in the south of France, but I'm not going to start these rumors, but rumor has it that he was called to Italy to give some advice to the new Pope on a strategic partnership moving forward with him and all these brouhahas. But look, Mike, those are just dirty rumors, I'm sure. And I'm sure wherever you were having a great time. I'm just glad that you're back.
I was in Rome.
What?
I took Mom.
The rumors are true.
The rumors you hear are true. I took Mom to Rome. She had never been. And, took her to the Vatican. We went to Assisi. We did kind of all this stuff. It was sort of it was a great pilgrimage. It was a great trip. Very aggressive. We covered a lot of ground, but, she'd never been.
How old is your mother?
My mom will be 80 in September.
Good for you and her.
Yeah. So, these are important moments, important times. But as you always, make the admonition at the end of the show, you still got your mama, spend those precious moments, make those phone calls because they matter. Life matters. And I appreciate you asking. And you had a great show while I was gone.
Oh, I know you want to talk about it. And I did it on purpose. And I didn't tell you on purpose so that I would get a chance to actually talk about the data. Because if you were on with those geeks, I would have never got to talk about anything. So I wanted you to listen and get into it because I want to dig into what you thought about those numbers.
Yeah.
For all of you listening at home, what's happened in the last week, 2 weeks, is you've seen the New York Times do an analytics of the county breakdown. You've seen Catalyst look at where the vote happened, where the vote didn't happen, the shifting of the votes. It has been crazy to look at these numbers because Democrats, my party, we knew we lost. I don't think we understood how bad we lost. I knew how bad we lost. And I think the biggest thing, and I'll stop and kick it to Mike, that when I made Michael Frias repeat what he said last week when I said, and I did it for Mike, and I hope, Mike, you listen because I literally did it for you. And I was like, tell the audience again how far the Latino vote has moved since Donald Trump has been on the scene. Like, it was like 17 points, y'all. Yeah. Like, this is not a little bit. But, Mike, I'll stop and kind of get your feedback, and I'm glad that you're back. And all the numbers that have been thrown at the internet in the last week or two, what's really been sticking out to you?
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot to cover. You leave for a week, and I'm glad. Thank you all for making sure the country's still here when I came back, because you never know nowadays. But there's also a lot of Latino polling numbers kind of all over the place. Most of the polling is showing, most of the objective, professional polling is showing that Trump's numbers are bouncing back up with Latino voters. I'm not terribly surprised by that. I'm not, there's nothing to read into this right now. I mean, look for movement, look for the bouncing. I think the real big takeaway on the polling, at least at this moment in time, is to understand that Latino voters they're economic voters. It's what we've been saying over and over and over again. Good about the direction. Things do calm down. Trump is going to be more open and accessible to them. And if it's not, he's not. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't matter whether it's Biden, doesn't matter whether it's Harris, doesn't matter whether it's Trump. That's what matters. And so there's a danger in overanalyzing the data. The Democrats lost. They lost, considerably. But it was fascinating to listen to the show with Maria and with Michael, because I think there's a little bit of an overreaction. I don't think it was that big. And let me say this: I don't think the problems are insurmountable. But it was also great to hear 3 Democrats talking, because I was like, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I'm like, these guys don't fucking get it. They still don't fucking get it. And I'm going to tell you why. The problem that the Democrats have with Latinos is not a tactical problem. It's not just showing up. If we just show up, it's going to be fine. That's not what happened. That's not what happened with George W. Bush, by the way. I was listening to that going, they don't even learn the lesson from 25 years ago. You've got to give Latino voters more credit, okay? It's not just showing up to the asada. It's not, you've got to do that. That's just politics. I get it. But by the way, the Republicans did not do that. Remember when we had Adrian Carrasquillo do that big article, and the Republicans pulled all of their storefronts out of Latino precincts? The Republicans didn't show up. The Republicans did not show up in these communities. They didn't. And what happened? They got historically high results. There's a message problem. It's not a tactical problem. And again, take this for a grain of salt. It's Mike Madrid, crazy-ass right-wing Republican, who has been right on all of this shit for the last 10 years. Okay? The Democratic Party is not the working man's party anymore. And this was the New York Times wrote on Shane Goldmacher's piece, which, and again, I think even Shane and the New York Times were giving Trump too much credit too. I'm not going to give Trump that much credit. This is not happening because of Trump. This is happening because of a class shift in this country, of which Latinos are the biggest, most central piece. The reason why Latinos are leaving is because it's not the party that Chuck Rocha joined in the early 1990s anymore. It's not. It's not. And it hasn't been for a while. It's just Latinos were so sticky because of a habit there for so long. But this was entirely predictable demographically. In fact, I was predicting it. And I'm not doing it to pat myself on the back. I'm doing it to say, guys, I wrote a fucking book on this. I was saying for 10 years, like, stop with it's about carne asadas and going to quinceañeras. That's not what the problem is. That's not your problem. The problem is you don't have policies that work for working class people. And that dog don't hunt anymore. So look, it was great to peek behind the curtain and see what was going on and listen, because it's like, sometimes it's good to have peek into a discussion between Democrats to see where they're at and where they're coming from. It was great to have a pundit and a campaign operative and a data guy. And I thought last week's episode was really, really, really good, because it's a really good understanding of all of the challenges that the party is facing. But I do believe that the party is stuck in this orthodoxy from the last century where they think that, well, we raised the minimum wage. Well, we're the party of labor unions. Those are last century solutions. That's not working. And it's also not, this asymmetric warfare that was being talked about too. I think that's absolutely true, but that's not why the shift is happening. Trump's not creating the shift, brother. This has been going on for a long time. And the fact that most of the shift was happening in blue states is, and this was what the New York Times analysis was showing too, Richie Torres' district was the most Democratic district in America is shifting. And again, I don't believe for a moment, sorry about the rant, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chuck, in a second, but I don't believe for a second this is pro-Trump. I don't believe that they're newly converted Republicans. I don't believe that. I just believe that the Democrats have so vacated the field on understanding the basics of what's happening with their own working class base, or what used to be their working class base, that Latinos, along with other working class people, just said, I've had it. It's enough. It's just not, these people are not relatable anymore. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I think you have your right to your opinion. And I think the way that I think about it is different, which is not shocking to people. I would agree with you that you could go to a carne asada 3 times a day, 7 days a week for 3 years and couldn't talk to enough people to win a congressional seat. Let's go clear about that. Right? A. When I talk about showing up, it's much different than how folks who don't run campaigns talk about showing up. And the example I use is this, which it does me no good to talk about things that aren't true. It only talks to me about things that are true in what I see in campaigns. And there's a group of Latinos that we've talked about in this podcast that now have come of age that don't know anything about the Democratic Party. They don't know really anything about the Republican Party either. And I push back here on, I don't think they know shit about public policy either, but they care about the things in their lives. I get that. I don't think Donald Trump has some great policy agenda that he's running on. I think he was smart enough to put it on a hat. I think people can relate with wanting their hat to be better and their lives to be better, make America great, keep jobs here. They know some basic shit, which again, don't let me go down a rabbit hole of how we fucked that up with the way we talk about public policy and building back together and infrastructure and things that are good, that college educated people know that are good long term. But working folks like, how the fuck does that help me today? So showing up means getting to those people and giving them a message that they can relate to. As Ruben Gallego says, talk to things that are popular with those people. Like, it's not that hard to talk about things that makes their lives better today. And the way that Chuck wrote, you don't think that we don't show up, is that we don't ever show up in their phone. We don't show up wherever they're consuming information, say, this is who we are. We'd love to have your vote. We're going to fight for you, whatever that fight is. It could be raising your wage. It could be getting you better insurance. It could get you a new house, lower your mortgage, whatever the things are that makes them have more money. I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth, but they want more money to take care of their family.
Yeah.
They want more money so they can go on vacation maybe once a year. And I think that Democrats are lined up, most of them, to help them the best. That's why I'm a Democrat.
But why?
But
Let me interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
Why? What policy solutions?
Policy solutions that would say we should have not the minimum wage, but we should have, like, folks should have jobs. Folks should have health care. Folks should have access to a house.
But the Democratic Party regulates these industries that we work in to death.
I get that now, but I get that now at 50.
Yeah, and that's all that the Republicans are saying is, like, just let people work. Like, people go, well, what solutions do you guys have as Republicans? And I'm like, you know what? We don't, because we don't believe in government. We're not looking for a government solution. You know what we're saying? Let us go to work. Let us open up the economy. Let us build homes. Stop squeezing people. Stop stepping on their neck with the Environmental Quality Act laws in California that are creating poverty with Black and brown people. Like, it's that simple. Get that out of the way.
And I never knew that even existed until I listened to an Ezra Klein podcast about California.
Right.
And about the things that stand in the way of that. He's a liberal. He'd love more affordable housing in California. I'd love that too. But he talks about the obstacles there. But the thing that stuck to me was not all of that, but it was the part about folks not feeling anything or us not delivering things immediately to them. I think that there's a pattern showing up. And when Mike referred to, and I listened, just so happens 2 days ago, to what you're talking about, and they talked about Starr County on the other side of the Bronx, two different things there.
Yeah.
And Starr County had voted in double digits for Barack Obama, had moved, correct me, Mike, 78 points, 78 something.
I think it was like 80. I couldn't even do the math. I was like, how do you 80? That's nuts.
Right. So it had a dramatic shift. So I don't think this happens in a vacuum. And I think me and Mike can go back and forth on why it's happening. But I think at the bottom line, and I'll kick it back over to Mike because there's a couple more things I want to talk about on this topic, is that I've watched my party in the last 6 months. Today is June. We're recording this on a Wednesday like we normally do. And we're looking at all of these instant fixes to a long-standing problem. That's why I had Mike Freya say this had happened over this period of time.
Yeah.
Because there's been a steady erosion. And now we're doing $20 million studies on men. Now we're looking at these things. And it's driving me crazy that, that there's simplistic ways to go at this piece, but I think a lot of people are missing it. Mike, let me throw this statistic at you and get your feedback on it. In the Catalyst data, it could have been, I think it's New York Times. It's the Goldmacher stuff. He said there's like 3,100 counties in America.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said that.
Yeah.
He said there were 1,400 of them that had moved over the Trump years, all moving right. They could have been all three counties, but they were moving right.
Yes.
I think he said there was only like 56 that actually moved left.
Correct.
And then the 56 stood out to me that these were the richest, most affluent counties in the country.
Yeah.
And we're 40 million, maybe I have the number wrong. We're in the red, the 1,400 counties, and a really small population in the blue. So we don't have much space to grow, where they have like red on top of red.
Yeah.
It used to be when I was a kid that we knew that the rural country parts of the country were that ruby red, but now that's just kind of like grown.
Yeah.
And what you're saying, and I want you to defend yourself. What you're saying is that you think this can continue without Donald Trump. Because you said that this is not Donald Trump should get credit for this. So where do we go when Donald Trump is done, or these midterm elections coming up right now? He's not on the ballot, but there are Trumpies on the ballot. Like, how do you center all that?
How do I square all that? That's a great question. And here's the answer. And again, this is why I thought it was so fascinating to kind of listen to Democrats on this. And by the way, that's Michael's dad was awesome. I'm looking forward to having him on the show. It's also nothing I haven't been saying for 10 years. There's a trend. That's why I wrote a book. The 2020 wasn't a one-off. 2024 wasn't a one-off. This has been happening for a long time. And so, yeah, it is fascinating to watch Democrats struggle with this and going, oh my God, this has been happening for a long time. Yeah. Some people have been saying it for a long time. And the problem is, as I mentioned, is foundationally and fundamentally this. 60% of Americans don't have a college education.
Say it again, Mike.
60% of Americans and American voters do not have a college degree. The fastest growing segment of the non-college educated workforce is Latino, overwhelmingly. The people entering the workforce overwhelmingly that don't have a college degree, that work with their hands, that are manufacturing, that are in agriculture, that are in construction. These are Latinos. These are all Hispanics, okay? And what is happening is a realization that the policy framework that Latinos have voted for when we were much more immigrant dense, we're much more Spanish speaking, when we're much more unskilled labor force, doesn't work anymore. The blue states are the ones that are the most unaffordable. They're the ones suffering the most with crime and crime problems. And these are disproportionately, you look at basically every economic and social metric, it's impacting Latinos more than it is anybody else. So what is shocking to Democrats is suddenly these Latinos are voting for this racist guy, Donald Trump. When, look, Latinos, no somos pendejos, as we say. We're not dumb people. We know the guy's, not a good dude for us. We know he doesn't like us. The vast majority of us get it. But that's not the decision that we're making. We know what we're going to get if we keep voting for the same thing. And this is why I keep saying it's not a tactical problem that the Democrats have. It's not a showing up problem. You'll have a policy problem. What you've been selling doesn't work. And California is exhibit A. New York is exhibit B. Illinois is exhibit C. What do those three states have in common? There are three of the top 5 Latino states and those are the only 3 blue ones. The others are Florida and Texas, where Latino numbers are blowing up for the Republicans because it's working there. You can buy a home in Texas. You can work in the energy patch in Texas. The Florida numbers are off the charts. We're talking 57, 60% for Trump and DeSantis. Huge numbers. Okay, New Jersey. Look, people in New Jersey, they're not voting to work in the oil patch in New Jersey. They're working because affordability and crime are out of control in a very blue state. And they're saying enough. So until there's actually a policy agenda, the Democrats have to get past the mindset that it's just showing up, that it's just buying Spanish language, that it's showing up early. You don't have a tactical problem, man. Brother. You got a strategic problem. You got a policy problem. What you're selling ain't working. And look, the easy thing for Republicans is their message is basically this. It's not working. We don't need to convince you of that. What we're saying is get these guys out of the way and everything will get better. And in many ways, it's kind of hard to argue that they're wrong. And again, this is coming from a conservative who's been saying this essentially for 30 years. But when you look at Texas and Florida, and you compare it to New York and California, where Latinos are doing better, Latinos are doing better in Texas than in Florida. They just are. Because those are places where they have working class industries where you can go to work and put in your 40 or 60 hours a week, whatever it is with some overtime, you can buy a house. And you can't do that in New York. You can't do that in California. You can't do that in New Jersey. And so that's what we're seeing. And like I said, it's not that they're selling anything that Latinos are necessarily buying like the Pied Piper. It's not like Donald Trump is attracting these people because he's got some sort of cult-like personality, although he does. The demographics have been showing this was coming before Donald Trump. And so that was kind of like, it was very insightful for me because you and I have this conversation every week. I talk to Latino politicians all the time, every day. I talk to Latinos in government affairs, talk to consultants and kind of explain this, but it was really cool to look behind the curtain and go, when you're listening to Democrats talking to Democrats about what the problem is, they're still just really, in my opinion, still just really skirting around the issues because no one's got the gumption to say what's clear. There's a policy problem. What we've been selling doesn't work. And that failure is why you're seeing the bigger shift, not in the battleground states, it's in the deep blue, big Latino states.
So is your argument that at the time when the use your words, Chuck, your English words, when the high water mark was at, let's say, the traditional is not even a good word anymore, when it was 70-30 Democrats. 70-30
2012. Let's say 2012.
Before that, the only bump up was George Bush, really, that kind of stayed there.
Right.
The policies must have been working then for them to get 70% for the Democrats. The question is, are you saying that their policy started failing after that? Or, let me finish.
Yeah.
Or are you saying that this demographic that's coming of age were the English dominant second, third generation that just looked differently at politics than the folks that were performing at 70?
More the latter, but let me give some context to the former. In 2012 and before that, the Latino electorate was much, much more immigrant, as you correctly pointed out.
We talk about that on here.
The policy solutions they wanted were not home ownership. They wanted to just be protected and get here and be here and have family here. That's what the Democratic Party was hitting home runs, walk-off homers with that. And the Republicans were being angry, mean, cruel people going, no, get the hell out of here. That's why they were winning. 2012 is the last year. Remember, the high watermark of immigration is 2007. We've been on a 15, 16-year decline up until the Biden administration when undocumented numbers and asylum numbers went through the roof. Okay? But the problem was that caused a pause where the Latino electorate changed. The Latino voter changed. All these under 30s, 30% of our electorate under 30s, 80% of them are U.S. born. They're not thinking about immigration. The Democrats keep talking about it, but they're talking to a shrinking group. These folks want to talk about economic opportunity. They want to talk about buying a home. They want to talk about why it's so unaffordable. They want to talk about why I can work a job and then got to drive Uber on the weekends because I can't afford to put my kid in a soccer league to play on Saturdays, so he ain't playing soccer anyway, and I got to make enough money to keep the lights on. Like, that's what they want to hear about. And all the Democrats keep telling them is what they were telling them in the 90s, in the early 2000s. That's the problem. And what the bigger problem is, at the same time, the Democrats are building the Obama coalition and talking about immigration. They're also become a whiter, more college-educated party. And you know what that means? Those folks are insulated from the economy. Those folks talk about culture issues and the environment all day long. They care about. That's the only demographic, by the way, the only demographic that has global warming as a top 5 issue are rich, white progressives. That's it. Working class people, it's number 50 on a list of 10. Okay, it's way down there. They don't care about it. They don't believe it. They're not buying it. They're way more worried about affordability. And so you have the coalitions in the Democratic Party are rich, white, college-educated homeowners who are creating the policy, who care about abortion, they care about marriage equality, they care about climate change, they care about gun control, they care about cultural issues. And you've got the emerging moderate working class folk who are trying to pay the rent, who care about economic issues. And their economic concerns are in conflict because a Latino worker who it takes pride in working the energy patch in the Rio Grande Valley. They don't feel that they're the devil. They don't feel that their jobs should be shut down. They're proud of their work. These are people that are proud of swinging a hammer and building a house. They're not bad because they're building on open space that used to be a park that I used to go look at. No, we're building housing for people to actually live in. Okay, the conflict between the cultural issues is significant between working class and college-educated people. That is a problem for the Democratic Party. But it's not nearly as big as the economic conflict between the two of them. The Democrats have both, which is why it's not just Latinos who are leaving, it's white working class people who are leaving. It's black working class people. It's Asian Pacific Islander working class people. It's all working class people going, this party doesn't care about or think about working class people because they don't. That's the problem. And so until the working class it's going to have to be driven by unions and not government unions, brother. Construction trades, people who work with their hands, people who shower at night, people who people who get sweaty and hurt on the work site have to stand up and go, look, if we're going to have a party that cares about working class people, our issues need to start being priority. The Obama years, rewind, that didn't work. We all bought into this propaganda and bought our own BS. It never worked, by the way. It worked demographically for a moment in time, but that is proven completely untrue and getting less and less true all the time. So until you have an FDR wing of your party again, until you have a party that wants to build dams and build bridges and get government the hell out of the way of industries to allow working class people to make a living, you're going to keep losing those voters.
I don't know if it centers with building dams and bridges, but I get that piece that people get that as far as part of a strategy. One of the things that I set with is, what does this mean for the midterms? And what does this mean now? Because I think there's a couple trains of thought. You have people in the political sphere who are saying the party can't be Bernie Sanders or AOC in the midterms. You have another train of thought that says you can't be, I don't know, whatever the alternative is of that. Some say Ruben Gallego, some say others. And I think it's important for the audience to understand that this is not a national election. There's no leader of the party. And it will be mainly around 7 or 8 governor's races, 4, 5, 6 Senate races that may be in play, and 25 or 30 House races. Much different places. The Central Valley of California looks much different than the suburbs of northern Denver, both Latino districts. One at 70% Latino, the other was at 48% Latino. So I think they have to run individual races there. I think the individual races of the things that I agree with, and there's things that I disagree with Mike, is that this working class narrative, we don't know how to do that. We don't know. I think that, let me back up and say the frustration I really have is that we've been really running. And for those of you watching on YouTube, what I just did is what I tell candidates not to do, which is clump your hands together and squeeze. See how white my hands are getting? That shows that I'm mad and that my fingers, like, you don't do that. You cup over it like this is how you teach a candidate to hold that thing down and then talking to the camera. The thing that frustrates me is the people that we're doing the best with, that Mike Madrid is describing and what the party has turned into, are mainly the folks who are running the party. And I mean running the party, no disrespect to executive directors, political directors, folks that are running these organizations, whether they're state committees or national PACs, like, they're good people. But we all know, if we're going to be frank, that there's a small conglomerate of polling consultants and media consultants that control the narrative of what we talk to voters about.
Yes, sir.
I'm a small part of that, a little bitty part of that. If it's on a hand, I'm a thumbnail. And what we do is we go in these posters, again, well-intentioned folks who want to help people, who want to help working people. They don't have an ill will in their body. But when they come up with a formulation of that question of what do we go ask people? I'll digress, but I was in a group of Latino leaders this week when I was like, the party don't give a shit about you. And they don't ask about what you or your organization care about. What they want to find out from Latinos, they will do an oversample of a regular poll and maybe throw in some Spanish speakers, and then they'll find out, or maybe if they have a lot of money, do a focus groups, and they think they know everything they need to know about the electorate, which is a Latino voter in a geographical area, and then they will come up with a question that here's the key point. This is the most important point that pollster thinks they care about. And then they'll ask that question. They'll ask 5 or 6 questions around that question. We get back that questionnaire to a group of consultants, and whichever one of those things performed the best, and it could have performed the best by a half of 1 point in all the averages. We take that verbatim from that poll and we make TV commercials out of it till the cows come home. And that's how we run campaigns, girls and boys, whether you like it or not. What Mike Madrid is saying is that message hasn't been working, or the movement wouldn't have happened. I think that's a piece of it. I'm not going to put those into Mike's words, because I don't think a half of our people even get to hear that ad. Either it's run on Spanish and they speak English. They never run a digital ad. And then over time, this builds on itself to where you have no concept of what the party is other than Joe Biden, and it's old and it's weak. You have a concept of what the Republicans are. At least they're for no government, or they're for Trump or whatever, and then you have what the fuck you got today. Am I missing anything?
Hang that in the Louvre, brother. Preach. That's exactly what the problem is. That you just nailed it. That's exactly it. And what I love hearing you say is when you say, look, I grew up, where you tell about where you grew up, the way you grew up, the way you got involved in the party, you're a union guy, you're working with your hands, had to go pay loans and pay for diapers. That's what makes you a great consultant, because there is nobody else who's approaching it in your party as a Latino, I guarantee you, that is looking at Latino voters that way, because you understand what that is. That's what the problem is, brother. That's what it is you don't have people who are going in and polling with that understanding. You don't even know what questions to ask. And so what I hate is this devolution into the stereotype. Oh, we got to go to quinceañeras. Oh, we got to, George W. Bush would go to bodas and bullshit. That's not why we did it. We did real work, brother. We were running No Child Left Behind. We positioned a Republican to win on education with Latinos. That's what we did. That's why we won. It wasn't because we were just, oh yeah, he goes to 16 de septiembre, Cinco de Mayo parades. Bullshit.
You're talking about, for all of you listening, the Bush election.
George W. Bush.
Yeah. So what we talked about in the last election is that he overperformed so much. And what Mike is saying is that they had a campaign that ran in totality of all the ways. If you remember when Mike talked about this, because I don't forget things that he says, even though I should, is that how they even put their signs up. Because he was talking about how, remind me, Mike, about how Trump has called it, I don't know if it was Hispanics, Latino thing. Was it America Hispanics? There was something.
Latino Americans.
Latino American.
Yeah, well, in 2016 or in 2020, the campaign was Latinos for Trump. They changed it to Latino Americans for Trump because the numbers were exploding on the American side. So look, the message about the George W. Bush campaign, I have to regress on this real quickly, but remember, this was in 2000 and 2004. This is when the community was really immigrant, really Spanish speaking. And we were still able to make inroads because why? Yeah, we were showing up, but more importantly, we were talking about the issue that mattered to them the most at the time. I hear you say this all the time very eloquently. Average age of the Latino is 30 years old in America. It is. You know what it was in 2000? 26, even younger. So you know what we're talking about? Education. You know what it is as you get to 30, as it is now? The economy, the job market. That where you're at in life tells you what the priority of the issues that you should be talking about. And that's what Republicans have been doing when they weren't beating up on Latinos on immigration. And that's why the whole difference between whether or not the Republican Party was going to be like George W. Bush's party or Pete Wilson's party was all predicated on, are you going to be like the California Republicans in the 90s and run as anti-immigrant party and lose everybody for 30 years? Or are you going to run like a welcoming guy like George W. Bush and saying, somebody who walks across 350 miles of desert to work for minimum wage is somebody I want working in Texas?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The question is, you talk about these immigration differences and the way that different parts of your party has handled that. And we've watched almost in horror of what's happened in the community in the last 6 months with people disappearing. I would like to say that there was a woman who was a bartender at the Democratic Club who I've known now for 20 years has just went missing on Monday. We don't know if it's immigration or if like something really bad has happened to her, but we would not even thought about that 2 years ago if somebody being disappeared. This is the point I'm making. But here's where I have a problem centering this, if I'm using them words right, Mike, because my question to you is, it's horrible what's happening with folks who shouldn't be deported. It's good that they're deporting. In my mind, I'm going to put this on Mike. In my mind, if you came here and you fucked up, you should have your ass sent out of here tomorrow. Yeah. I get that. The definition of fucked up is do something bad. Speeding ticket is not fucked up. In my opinion, that's for the rest of y'all to figure out. I see a lot of more in my mind. You tell me if I'm wrong or your opinion. I see a lot more white people, the suburban educated, the folks who have the privilege to care about lots of democracy and shit, who are now over the top, losing their mind because folks are getting deported as they should. I'm with them. I'm with them 110. But in our community, do you think it's going to be as bad or not as bad?
That's a great question.
Because in our community, I think that, anyway, I don't want to answer your question. I'll stop.
No, say more.
I was going to say that I can see there's a difference, boys and girls, between Latino voters and the Latino community.
Yeah.
We're the lowest showing up group of voters because we're younger. We haven't been here as long. I can do this all day. But there are folks in the community who are, sure, these are bad people and they should be deported. They're not at the protests to stop them. If you watch cameras on what's happening with people that have been deported, you got Karens showing up in nightgowns, taking on ICE agents and trying to whoop their ass to protect some Latino down the street, not another Latino.
The Latinos are saying, get rid of the illegals.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that they're saying that. I'm just saying what I'm seeing on TV.
Yeah, that was Mike Madrid. And I'm saying that as a professional political consultant who's dealt with this issue for 30 years. This example, boys and girls, if you're driving, listening to this, pull over and take notes, because this is the difference here. And I'm not going to make a judgment call on the right or wrong. I'm with Chuck on this stuff. I believe that these ICE crackdowns are a horrible, toxic, corrosive, ugly side of this country that should not be happening. Okay. But as a political professional, I will tell you right now that third generation, especially Latinos, second generation, even immigrants themselves, have a higher threshold of support for this than at any time in the past 30 years that I have been looking at it. And here's the fundamental reason why. And I hate this argument because I've watched Republicans use this, and it's a bullshit argument, but it's the most powerful, flippant argument on immigration, and nobody changes. There's a simple question to ask that gives them this political high ground. They sacrifice the moral high ground, in my opinion, on this. But I've never seen voters change once this question is asked or presented. It's about legal versus illegal. Once that card is played and thrown on the table in front of voters, it doesn't matter, because the question is, if you think that you're here illegally, a lot of people don't believe that you should have any constitutional rights. You shouldn't be here to begin with. I don't care about your speeding ticket. You're not supposed to be here. There's nothing else after that. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying, as a political professional that has pulled this issue a gazillion times in 3 decades, you're never going to move those voters back off of that. And that doesn't mean that Latinos naturally believe that we should have the Democratic traditional position on immigration. In fact, 2024 proved the opposite. Remember all those polls that were showing that more than half of Hispanics in Texas supported Governor Abbott sending migrants to Martha's Vineyard? Remember all of those polls in California, blue California, saying that 63% of Latinos said that the undocumented were a burden on the taxpayer? That's just facts, brother. I'm not talking to you, Chuck, but this is my rant to people who don't get this. You may not like it, but in the world of politics, as a political professional, you've got to remove yourself from that and say, I may be so morally opposed to it, but if 63% of my base voters support it, I can be righteous all day long and get my ass kicked, or we've got to figure out a policy to get back in the game here with the vast majority of our own base, because if we don't, we're going to lose in the same type of fashion that Kamala Harris lost. That's what happened. So the Democrats double, quadruple, quintuple down on their orthodoxy, and it's coming largely from white, college-educated progressives who know better about Latinos and what Latinos should be thinking than what Latinos actually think. And that's the conflict in the party, because they're the ones with the money, brother. They're the ones who run the political consulting firms. They're the pollsters.
Pollsters is the key.
Yeah.
Because so many
of the Democratic Latino pollsters were selling shit.
Well, this ain't got nothing to do with them, in my opinion. This is all of these folks who do the regular polling in congressional and Senate races. And this is what I'll say is, when you have a consultant class that has been, again, well-intentioned, but lost connection with regular folks that Mike Madrid's talking about, that means that you will never defer from that poll, Mike. You will only use the wording in that polling because you don't want to get into an uncomfortable position of going outside and being blamed for something that's wrong. The poll said do this. We're going to do it this way. And this is what the results of the poll are. I'll remind everybody at home, y'all, poll testing and polling. Kamala Harris underperformed in every Democratic county in America. She underperformed with Latino voters in every single county in America. But guess what, Mike? She spent $66 million ad testing every single ad that not only her, but that the super PAC did before they put everything out, because the pollsters, the analytic scientists, And all the nerds and all these well-intentioned white folks knew exactly that they were going to do it right. They didn't want to take any chance. They were going to test it. We're not going to serve ads. We're going to cut all these other consultants out so that we have one place where we do all this work and all this ad testing. What did that get us? It got us the worst loss in our history. I'm going to give you a quote, and then I'm going to stop talking. This is from, and I want your reaction to this, and then we're going to end this podcast in the next 10 minutes so we don't do a 2-hour Joe Rogan. There was a political article today about how Democrats had spent, or their supporting group, stay in your seat, Mike, $20 million to study young men and to figure out what's wrong with young men. We'll leave all y'all there. If you're watching on the YouTube, that's my left eye twitching. But one of the quotes that stood out to me that I wrote down this morning in the gym, because I knew I'd get to talk to Mike Madrid today, I had to read this verbatim to him. And then I'm going to read it to him. We're going to watch his reaction, and then I'm going to close this damn podcast. I quote, another Latino man from Las Vegas said during the 2024 campaign, Harris focused on, and I quote, oh, I got Beyonce on stage with me. Oh, I got Lady Gaga on stage. And I quote, it just kind of felt like, what does that have to do with me? I'm trying to move up in my life. Trump's over here saying, like, if we're able to get a budget surplus, then maybe we can have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. It's going to take a while to get to that point, but at least he's saying things that, oh, this is what I'm going to do, a Latino man added. I think that kind of made your case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jesus. I mean, yes. That's it right there.
I'm going to send you $20 million, by the way.
I know, Bill. It's like, my God. One of the things that still, Chuck, fascinates me about working in this industry for 30 years is how viscerally people will fight against listening to the damn truth. That's it right there. They're telling you what the problem is. That's the problem. Fix that. And if you can't fix that, it's because you're too afraid to take on the people in your own party, the interest groups who are killing you. That's the problem. That's what, who I've always appreciated, James Carville. He's been getting crucified during the election for saying what he's saying. The dude is absolutely right. He's not making any money at this. He don't give a rip anymore.
He's out of give a shit.
He don't give a shit anymore. And good for him. I mean, I wish I had waited 20 more years till I was his age before I could say I don't give a shit. But I don't give a shit anymore.
I do.
That's why
for everybody at home, I give a shit. Whatever crazy shit he says, I'm not saying it.
Yeah, this is Mike Madrid here.
I got to make a little bit more money before I can get out of this thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Carville has been saying this stuff because he's right. The Democratic Party has lost its mind. And like I said, it can get back, but it's going to be really hard because they really, really bought into the bullshit that they've been selling since the Obama years. And all of that stuff was predicated on a falsehood. It was on the idea that Latinos were never going to change. We were just going to always be Spanish-speaking immigrant people who cut lawns. That has never been true of us, ever. And now, but there's a whole political class and a whole narrative of white consultants who just wants to make us these exotic little non-white creatures. And there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party willing to fucking make money by dancing to that tune for them and selling them data that says that and behaving that way and saying, oh, if you just go to the carne asadas and do this and that's what's going to happen. Bullshit. Fix people's lives and you don't have to worry about the internal politics. Do what's right.
Boom. You'll notice this week, and I appreciate everybody tuning in this week, you'll notice that in Politico as well this week, there was an article talking about how I had sent all the Democratic donors, Mike Madrid, you'll like this, a letter from me and Tony Cardenas saying, y'all wasted all your money in the last election. There's a better way to do this. You talk to Latinos earlier. You talk to them more often. You talk to them where they're at. That don't mean at the carne asadas. That means on your digital platform. And you do what we did with Bernie Sanders when we dominated the vote. Right? It helped that I had a good messenger, to Mike's point. Anyway, we're going to have a lot more to talk about next week. We're going to appreciate all of you who tuned in this week on the YouTubes. Don't forget to subscribe. I mean, subscribe. It's still free. Mike Madrid's going to start charging y'all $50 a month, but for now, it's free. So get the subscription now. And I told him it'd be grandfathered in. Everybody gets to be free. I want to appreciate it. We're up to 1,000 YouTube listeners now, Mike. I don't know. You must have got all your family because there's like 20,000 Madrids in California, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for getting them all in.
Good to be back with you, brother. Missed you. It's always good. I love being able to tune in and and listen to what you're up to. You put on a good show, and you carried the weight there, and I appreciate you.
We'll be coming in back to you next week. Don't forget to like, follow, listen. Don't forget, if you're lucky enough to have your mom and dad around you, all you have to do is call them. You don't have to take them to Rome, but at least, gosh damn it, give them a call. Thank y'all for listening this week. And until next week, me and Mike Madrid, we're out.